This is the Other What podcast.
The other what?
The other what?
The other what? The other one.
Hello, hello, hello. Welcome. Today on the Other What podcast, we are going to talk about coming out, realizing we were gay, our first queer experiences, and coming out to our parents. I am so excited about this episode. My good friend Sharon is not as excited, but that's going to make it even better. And because of that, Sharon, when did you realize you were gay?
Okay, so I'm gonna warn everybody. Okay, the realizing I was gay story, kind of fun. My first queer experience, cringy. Desiree's is much nicer, so we're gonna hopefully end on a more positive note than my cringiness. So just buckle up. This will be fun. So in high school, I actually dated a Filipino boy. And we dated for a while, and there was another guy that I went to homecoming with, and he had this weird obsession with my Filipino boyfriend and some weird obsession with me, like to a point where and this is before Legos were like really popular, but I used to build models of Star Wars.
Of course you did.
Of course I did, yeah. So I built a Star Wars Millennium Falcon model back in the days when you had to glue shit together and then like paint it and everything like that too. And he's the one who bought it for me. And I was like, why did this guy buy it for me? It was like really strange. Come to find out that after we all graduated from college, he had a huge crush on my boyfriend at the time, and he thought I was gay. And I was like, I don't even know what gay means, you know.
So you were basically like his beard without knowing it.
Even knowing it. And he was just like, duh, of course you're gay. And I was like, I don't know what that means. And then we would go, I went to gay pride with him. Like we talked about going to the LGBTQ community center in Midtown Atlanta. And I was like, oh, all the signs are pointing to the fact that I think I'm gay. Like I'm such a tomboy. I did try to date boys in like my freshman year of college, and I just was like, this is just not fun. It just was never fun for me. And my poor high school Filipino boyfriend, I broke up with him and broke his heart and everything. But something didn't feel right. Like you've said that before, like even about religion, right? Something just didn't feel right. And I think that was when I realized that I was gay. And I think too, at the time, I really didn't know what bi was. I didn't know if you could be with men and women. So I went from one extreme to another. I was like, I have to date a woman. I have to sleep with a woman and see what this is like. Because it's either or. I did not know there was an in between. I didn't know there was a gray like there is today with so many of people identifying that way. So that's kind of what happened. And so Desiree, tell me, when did you realize you were gay?
Well, Sharon, it was 1992. In Vogue's Giving Him Something He Can Feel music video. I just remember thinking, these women are so beautiful. But it was the part of the video where they take down their long silk gloves and throw it into the audience. And I was like, I want to be one of these men in the audience who are getting this glove thrown at them.
Oh, nice.
I was like, this is hot. This is hot.
You were like soft porn in a music video. Yeah.
Hello. Yes. Give me something I can feel, please. Lord. I was a tomboy growing up. And, I played sports. I did track and field. I played softball, which is a big lesbian sport.
You're such a dyke.
Basketball. I know.
You're such a dyke.
I don't know why anybody was confused about this, But yeah, so in 92, I think that was the first time I realized I'm feeling a little different. And I was never boy crazy. Except there was one guy that I really just had a super crush on, but he didn't like me until I got my braces off and started wearing contacts. And I only dated him for a couple of months just because I was like, well, he's still really cute.
That's so funny. That's so funny. So it's so funny. I think 1992 was about the time where I discovered the Indigo Girls and Melissa
Oh,
Etheridge.
yes.
Like, talk about gay,
Yes.
gay, gay. I actually just got that
Yes.
Spotify Unwrapped, and I was designated like the same musical taste as Burlington, Vermont. I am so fucking gay, even to this day. But like, so what's funny is that my Filipino boyfriend, his dad collected CDs, right? Back in the days of CDs.
Oh, Columbia House,
Oh my
right?
God.
Yeah.
So many CDs.
Yeah.
And he had every Melissa Etheridge album. He had every Indigo Girls album. And I just got obsessed. And like, I think my boyfriend at the time did not really understand what was going on. He bought me tickets to go see Melissa Etheridge when we were in high
What a
school. I know,
gentleman.
what a gentleman. And he had no idea.
Yeah.
And I remember walking into, it was like at one of those big stadium places in Atlanta. And I walked into the bathroom and I looked around and going, these are not the usual women that are in the bathrooms that I'm used to. What is happening? I don't understand.
Sharon, how many bathrooms are you frequenting? The truth?
I know, right?
Like, let me check out what's in here.
Right. Not the right bathrooms, obviously. But it was so funny. And I was like, God, that should have been an indication like early
Yeah.
on how on the music. I think you're right. Like
Yeah.
the music videos, the music, it actually showed us something that kind of like triggered something in our brains.
And I also stumbled into, I think we had a Books A Million bookstore. I don't know if you remember those. And they had like a gay section. I can remember like trying to sneak away from my parents to go see like what's in this section, like what's over here. And then when I moved away after, well, this is a part of my coming out story. I don't want to skip ahead of this.
That's okay. The fact that a Books A Million had a gay section, that's really impressive. I think Outright, do you remember Outright at the corner of Piedmont and 10th? That was the first gay bookstore I ever went to. And I was like, there's gay books? Wow. Oh my God. The first lesbian erotica I ever read, I was like, what the fuck?
Yes. I actually wrote down a book that I remember reading when I was 18. I had been, right before I came out, I had moved to Atlanta. And it was by an author. Her name was Lisa Moore. And it was a coming out book from other Black women writing their stories. And it was called Does Your Mama Know? I loved that book.
Awesome.
I resonated so hard with it. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not the only one.
That's amazing.
I'm not the only one.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was such a good book. And then just even I started to think about like my first experience. Like, what was my first queer experience? And I'm not talking necessarily my sexual experience, but just like the first time you talked to a woman. Like, what was that like for you, Sharon?
Oh God, I was a wreck. So, dude, I'm still a wreck, right? Like, I'm completely clueless. When I was like in college, I was like an Energizer bunny. I had way too much energy. I think I really like, I kind of like made people uncomfortable because I was so energetic. I know you think it's funny because I'm so energetic today, but think about this like 10x Sharon, like that's how I was.
Yeah.
So yeah, like talking to my first woman, I remember like going on a date with an Agnes Scott girl. Desiree, all you Agnes Scott girls, all you Scotties.
Yes,
I was a wreck.
Yeah.
I made the stupidest jokes.
Well, you were a rambling wreck, though.
I know. The Georgia. The funny thing is that like I think like there were like approximately 3 lesbians on campus. And like I actually lived at Georgia Tech, and I lived with 2 of them. And and actually, what happened was like I wasn't like one of those daters like you. Like I would just become friends with people and then maybe date around, and I don't know. We'll get into all of that stuff, but it was always just super awkward for me. And I think it's still awkward for me even to this day. When a pretty girl comes around, I go, and I just don't even know what to say anymore. That's what happens a lot. So.
Oh, I can't wait to hear more about this experience.
Yeah. After the break. We're going to talk a little bit about our first queer experiences. And as promised, I'm going to go first because mine's a little bit cringy. Or maybe it's just because I think it's cringy because it's
I'm
not like
sure
this.
it's not.
Yeah, it's just like this. I wish it was like this, like beautiful, oh my God, like, explosion of like, like fireworks. And no, mine was not. Mine was like, I can't believe I'm still dating women after this experience. And that's kind of how it went, right? Thank God I did, right? There was obviously something that
Yes.
was good out of it. So I was on the co-op program at TAC, which was great at Georgia Tech. And so I had a quarter off where I could work. And so they sent me down to LaGrange, Georgia to work at a factory. And I lived with two dudes. They were super nice. And I just started I was just playing tennis by myself one day, like hitting the ball against the wall. And I was reading Sylvia Plath's The Bell Jar at the time because, goddamn, I was a lesbian. And it was in the back of my car. And this woman sees it in the back of my car when I'm putting my stuff away. And she's like, "Are you reading that?" She starts talking me up. She's an older woman. And she obviously knew I was gay. She invited me back to her place. So we just started talking. And then one night she invited me over and that was my first experience. Fine. It wasn't like fireworks or anything. But then she started talking to me about crazy stuff. So she was into this thing called I think it was called the Feminist Manifesto. I will put it in the show notes. Is this woman who actually was the one who I think assassinated Andy Warhol. She was
This story is not going where I thought it was going.
I told you it was cringy, and I can't remember the name of the woman, but we'll totally put in the show notes. And so this woman wrote a manifesto about and it was militant feminism, militant, violent. And she starts talking about it and she starts, telling me all about this. And I was like, oh God, oh God, oh God. And so then my quarter, in LaGrange is up and I go back to TAC and I'm in my dorm room and I got a new roommate who was doing actually the woman's name, the woman who did the manifesto was named Valerie Solanas, now that I remember it. But anyways, so my roommate at the time was doing a dual degree between Spelman and Georgia Tech. So she was new. And we had just, we just met. We were living in this tiny little dorm room on East Campus. And I keep getting, this is back in the days of pagers, right? So it wasn't a cell phone. So this woman just keeps on paging me every hour on the hour in the middle of the night. Like the pager would just go off and go off and go off. Like she just not leave me alone. And I did not, it was very non-confrontational. I tried to break up with her. Didn't work. And I mean, finally, to get this woman to stop paging me, I said, what do you want? What do you want from me? And she goes, I want all of your journal entries about me. And I want you to send them to me. Yep. And so I had to make copies of my journal entries and send them to her in the U.S. mail. And then I've never heard from her since.
How did she even know you journaled about her?
Because I probably told her. I mean, it was my first experience, how could you not journal about your first experience?
Yeah.
And so, and then I've never heard from her since. And my roommate at the time, who I'm still friends with, bless her heart, was like, I finally told her that I was gay. And she's like, thank God you're gay because I thought you were a drug dealer.
Wait, so your roommate basically is saying only two types of people have pagers, lesbians and drug dealers.
We still talk about that story to today. It's hilarious. It's freaking hilarious. Anyways, so that's why mine was a little cringy. It was like it was this woman just kind of she needed some power over me, I guess. It's kind of what it was.
What she did with those journal
I don't know,
entries.
dude. I don't even care anymore. She's out of my life. I never heard from her since, and it was a long time ago.
That's pretty wild.
Yeah. Okay.
That's wild.
I want to hear Desiree's story because I've heard the warm fuzzy. I can't wait for this because we need to end on a good note, not on Sharon's cringy note.
No. So my first experience happened, it would have been in 1996. I was at a gas station in Savannah, pumping gas, and then I heard somebody call my name. And it made I got chills and I could feel like the hair standing up on the back of my neck. And I was like, that's a new feeling. And I turned and it's somebody that I knew, but I hadn't seen her in a long time. We went to middle school together. And I'm a senior in high school at this point. She was a year ahead of me, so she's in college. And I was like, oh my gosh, like she had moved away because her parents got divorced, but she had come back to Savannah to go to college. And like we hadn't seen each other in at least 4 years at this point. And she was just so beautiful. And I was like, oh my God, I have never felt like this about anybody. Not even my high school boyfriend at the time. Like, the guy I was dating then I think he was a freshman in college, but I'd never even felt like that about him. Just like saying my name, like my back was to her initially, but just the way she just said, Desiree, I'm not doing it any justice. I cannot say it as sexy as she said it. And I was like, holy shit. Like my heart started racing and she gave me a hug. And I was like, oh my God, breasts feel so good.
They do.
Wow.
God, we are suckers for those boobs, man. We are
Oh my gosh.
suckers.
So we're standing there talking, pumping gas. I was driving like an 89 Plymouth Voyager.
Nice.
Because it's my parents' car and we have all these damn kids. And we're standing there talking and she's with this guy who was like, basically like, girl, come on, we got stuff to do. We exchanged numbers and she's like, why don't you call me? And I was like, okay. And I'm driving home, Sharon, and I could not stop thinking about her. My heart was still racing. And I was like, why am I feeling like this? Like, I was so nervous. And so when I got home, at this time, we had recently moved from, the year before we had recently moved to another house. So now we have a second phone line, which I felt very fancy and very rich to have two phone lines because my parents had a line and then the kids, actually the girls, we had our own phone line. And I called her. And we were on the phone until I had to get dressed for school.
Whoa.
I was like hiding in our closet. Hiding in the closet, talking to her until like 6:00 in the morning. And we covered so many things about like family. What have you been doing lately? I was like, this is how like I'm feeling. I don't know what this feeling is, but I am feeling this for you. And it's so crazy now thinking back on it because I probably look like just some little in love person, but she worked at the mall, at one of the malls. So in Savannah, we have two malls. And if you're from Savannah, even 30 years later, you still refer to them as the old mall and the new mall. She worked at the new mall, which was on the south side of the city and a much farther drive from anywhere I needed to be. Like I had no reason to be on the south side, but in between my responsibilities of picking up my siblings after I got out of school and dropping them off to all their activities before I had to pick them up, I would take my ass to the south side to the store she worked in and would basically just hang out in this clothing store. The owners were Asian and they always looked at me like, why is this same girl in here every day? I mean, I would literally just be like pretending like I'm shopping, looking in the racks, and she'd come over and talk to me. And it was just so sexy, so sexy. Finally, we got to my parents. If they listen to this, they're going to be like, oh my God. But finally, she invited me back to her apartment like a week later. And now that was a little bit easier to get to because it wasn't too far from my parents' dental office.
Nice.
So I could leave the car there and be like, oh, I'm just going to go for a walk and then go over to her place. And I can remember Erykah Badu's album, like just listening to that on repeat. She was very like this earthy, beautiful Black woman who like had her natural hair and incense and candles and just very like spiritual. And, she had a nose ring, which was very kind of taboo back in the 90s, but it was so sexy. And we just kind of sat in her living room and like started making out one time. And I was like, oh my God, whoa, I never felt like this with any guy I ever kissed. Not that I was kissing a lot of guys back then, but I just felt so good. And in that moment, I felt like so safe and just elated. It was just so magical. And I don't talk to her anymore, but not because of anything bad, but we did keep in touch probably up until our early 30s. And then we just lost contact. But anytime we would like not see each other for a long time, we would talk about that, just like that period of time. And that lasted for about 4 months. And then I moved to Atlanta. And then, back in the 90s, nobody really had cell phones back then. So it was very hard to kind of stay in touch and be in a long distance relationship. But I mean, I wish everybody could have like a first time experience like I had, because it was just so wonderful. And I've been kind of in this long process of trying to write a book about my life. And this is one of my favorite stories to talk about. And I can't wait to put that in the book. But it was just magical. I loved every moment of it. I can still, the Tony song, It's Our Anniversary. That was like our song, even though we weren't together long enough to really be like, oh, we have an anniversary. But every time I hear that song, I still think of her and think of me walking in the clothing store she worked in, just following her around the racks
my
as
God.
she's like straightening up the clothes.
Desiree, that's a beautiful story.
Thank
God,
you.
we are so opposite. I think of the Feminist Manifesto. I will figure out where that is, and I run the other way. That's what happens to me.
Hives.
I get hives.
You should put that in a profile. Like, have you ever read the Feminist Manifesto? And if they say yes, then you block them.
Totally.
Block them.
Swipe.
Oh my God.
Good
Well,
stuff.
After this break, let's talk about coming out to our parents and what that was like.
Sounds good.
All right.
Okay.
We'll be right back. So coming out to my parents, oh boy, that would have been so I graduated high school May 1997, and my mom said, hey, we're going to take this family trip to Hawaii. Do you want to do the family trip to Hawaii, or do you want to start college early? And I was like, get me the fuck out of here. I will start college. Hawaii will be there. So I passed up on a trip to Hawaii because I knew I really wanted to get to Atlanta. Was moved in with my my sister's godmother until my apartment was ready, and was like, I knew for sure at this point, I am definitely into women, and trying to decide like the best way to tell my parents. And so my sister, who's right under me in order, we got close once I moved away. And so I was sharing with her, hey, so back in high school, this happened, and this is how I feel. How do you think I should approach this with mommy and daddy? And so the two of us decided, let's ease them into it. Let's just say you're bisexual. Let's ease them into this. And so I was like, okay, cool. So I went home for something, and my dad picked me up from the airport, which he never was the one that picks us up and drops us off to the airport. My mom was usually the one. And that was back when AirTran was still around, and you could get like a last minute trip if you were under 24.
I loved AirTran, man.
Yeah,
So
like $75.
When you were able to sit at the airport and just wait for a plane and there was no TSA. Yeah, totally. Those are the days.
So I went home for something, and on the drive home, I was like, Daddy, I have something to tell you. I really like women, and I had this experience in high school, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, not even really looking at me, just driving. He's like, okay, well, I kind of figured something was going on. And I was like, okay.
Go, Dad.
And funny enough, though, his thing was just date someone that's pretty. Like, make sure she's pretty. So
I love
like,
that.
okay.
I love the theme of your family. Just make sure they're pretty.
Oh my God. Like, I'm like, well, what about their personality? They're like, that's cool too, but aesthetically, what you working with? And then so later, I get to the house and I go to tell my mom. My mom is devastated. And I was like, I mentioned in a previous episode, like I was so surprised that this hit her so hard because she did grow up with first cousins that were gay. And we actually went through a period of time where it was very difficult for us to even communicate, which was very hard for me because my mom and I were really close growing up. But like you mentioned this, I think in another episode, like the shame,
Mm,
like she told me that when people would ask about me, she would not want to even talk about me for a bit.
yeah.
And that was really hard for her because I was kind of that kid that I did really well in school. I was like the queen of my high school. Like literally, I was in a pageant and won. And I played all these sports. And even with our Jewish Community Center, I was a big deal there. I won like this huge award. There's still a picture of me hanging up in there to this day.
Nice.
And yeah, and my mom was like, she just wasn't with it. And she even like wrote me a bunch of notes on just like how she felt. And I was like, I had to remind her, my parents always instilled in us, like, don't care about what other people think about you. It's what you think about yourself, how you feel. Nobody else's opinion matters. And so I got to a point with her when I was very young, 18, 19 years old, of just having to tell her, look, you raised me to not care what other people think. And in this case, that kind of includes you,
Mm,
and I think that was a little hard for her, but she eventually came around in 2014,
14.
almost 20 years
I
after I came
I
out. But
I really
yeah,
do
what about,
believe that our parents have to go through their own coming out, right? And it
yeah,
takes
to
them,
grieve
yeah,
too.
grieve. I think it takes them a lot longer to get
Hmm.
there. Um, so I love that you were able to use your siblings and like kind of figure out the strategy. I had no strategy. I was an idiot. I had a girlfriend in college. This is after the
Hmm.
crazy girlfriend. Um,
Hmm.
who I was like, oh, computer science major. Like, I really like her. I'm so excited. And, because it's just me and my parents, I would see my parents every week in college.
Hmm.
We would go up to Beaufort
Wow.
Highway, get dim sum. And for some reason, this dim sum ended up being on Chinese New Year. God, I
Okay.
was such an idiot. Like, I didn't even think about it, right? And I was like so excited and I wanted to share it with them because I was just having so much fun, and
Yeah.
I just told them over dim sum.
Okay.
I can see it in my head at Canton House on Beaufort Highway. We'll put that in the show notes. Really good dim sum on Beaufort Highway if anybody wants to go there. But yeah, that didn't go over so well. My mom was kind of in shock. She didn't say anything, and my dad just started pounding his fist on the table. He got really angry. He raised his voice. He's got a temper. Pretty much
Hmm.
had to leave the restaurant. And I remember like sitting outside going, oh shit, what did I just do? I just came out to my parents. That was really not cool.
Hmm.
I didn't do it in a great way. And in pure Asian fashion, we didn't talk about it. They just drove me. No, seriously, they drove me back to the dorms. They dropped me off. And then they just went home. And then the next day, I swear to God, this is what happened. And then the next day, my dad is like, hey, I need the car keys to your car. And I was like, oh, okay. And so he took my car and he put a new stereo in my Honda Accord, my 94 Honda Accord. And I was like, thanks, Dad. And we never talked about it after that.
I guess that was his way of saying, okay.
My father, the way he shows love is to like give me gifts. And I think
Hmm.
that there was him saying, I love you. It's okay, but I don't understand. And I'm not talking about this. And that's really what happened until I got my first serious girlfriend. And we still don't really talk about me being gay. They just accept the fact that
Hmm.
I bring women home, and they're very
Hmm.
accepting of the women, right? They call them their second daughters, or
Oh.
I date only white women, so they also be like, oh, you're 75% Asian, and they'll like make funny like things like that. But like they've never said the word gay to me or lesbian, and you just don't talk about it. I know it's so
Wow.
weird, but
No.
it was them accepting me, even though they they had a really bad reaction in the
Mhm.
yeah. So
I part of me coming out and also just a later more confirming my realization that I am gay is I can remember also in '97 when Bound came out,
oh, that was a
going to
great
Blockbuster,
movie.
renting it, and then locking my bedroom door at my sister's godmother's house so that I could watch it.
Oh my god! So the movie for me, and I watched it on repeat, was Gia with Angelina
Oh
Jolie.
yeah,
Oh my
yeah.
god, that was
Adventure,
sexy.
what Incredible Adventures of Two Girls in
Oh
Love with
yes,
Nicole Ari Parker and
yes.
I don't know her name.
Laurel
Laura,
Holloman.
yeah,
Oh my god,
that's
that one was
from
really
yeah,
good too. I loved all
yeah.
of those. Oh my gosh.
Then also in '97, I went to a lesbian film festival, like the Gay and Lesbian Film Festival here in Atlanta, and there was a black shorts film
That's
showing, and
awesome.
one was called A Love's Tale. And I actually recently watched it. I found it online and watched it, and first of all, the sound quality is so terrible. The cinematography is awful, but it was still such a good like 20-minute film. I'll have to find the link
That's
because I
great.
love that movie. Yeah.
So like Asian representation wasn't like really big, but I think like in the early 2000s it became really big in the movies. And for me, one of the
Hmm.
big ones was a movie called Saving Face. It was the first time it was
Oh.
two lesbians, right? Like one's the
Mhm.
doctor, one's the ballerina, of course,
Yeah.
whatever. And like a lot of it is in Mandarin, which is amazing. I tried to watch it it was like on a Delta flight I was on. I was like, wow, I forgot about this. And it really does. It was like the first time you saw Asian lesbians on screen. It
Yeah.
was very cool. It was very, very cool.
Oh man.
Man, those are
Well,
good
I wonder
stories.
what. Yeah, I wonder if anybody who's listening has any great coming out stories or cringy coming out stories.
Yeah, I'm
Because
sure.
ours are our first experiences are definitely very different.
Which is why we're friends, right? I
Right.
think that's something that we love about each other is that every time we tell a story,
Yeah.
I'm like, that is so not what happened to me, Desiree. Oh my God.
Right.
But yeah,
Right.
like we would love to hear from you guys. Please like DM us on Instagram or, send a message or something or go to our website at
Mhm.
theotherwhat.com and like, we'd love to hear, and we'd also love to hear what you guys want us to talk about next. Like, what are some topics
Yeah.
that you think are interesting? Like, are there things that you want us to double click on? Like, we've talked about so many things in the last few episodes. Like, it'd be really cool to see what you all want to hear from us and what you guys want us to dive into. So thanks for
I would love
listening.
to.
So thanks for
Yes.
listening. We
Yes.
really appreciate it. We have so much fun doing this, and I really hope that like you all have fun listening to it.
All right. Well, thanks, Sharon. Always good to talk
All
to you.
right, talk to you later.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Love ya.
For more, The Other What, check out our other episodes. You can find those at theotherwhat.com. Have comments, thoughts, or reactions to something we said? Be sure to subscribe and comment. The Other What is a production of 559 Labs. The Other What is hosted by Sharon Go and Desiree Jamerson. This episode was produced and edited by Andrew Marconi. Music by Alexei Anisimov. It was recorded in Atlanta, Georgia. Thanks for listening and be sure to tune in next time.